Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 27th and best episode of the Hashcast. And as always, I have a guest way cooler than myself. I have a guest who's often introduced as the busiest lady in the biz, but I have also gotten to know her as one of the kindest and most generous persons in the biz as well. My good friend, Andrea Rene. How are you?
Hey, Wout, how are you? Thank you
good.
so much for having me on the show tonight. I know we've been trying to get together to do this for quite some time, so Thanks for your patience with my weird and wild schedule.
It's great. I think we were trying to aim for June, but that was like pre-E3, and it was just a bad idea in general.
Oh, yeah. No, summer is just such a nightmare schedule-wise because of trade shows and convention season. It's so busy. I'm so glad that it's kind of quieted down now from now until like the end of the year.
Yeah, it is good. And no PSX this year, so that's another one off the schedule, at least. But
I know, but it's sad though, right?
Yeah, it is a little sad. But we have now the Kind of Funny press conference or whatever that's going to be.
The Kind of Funny Game Showcase, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm sure you'll be busy either way.
Well, Greg is doing pretty much all of the work.
Oh, that's good.
I'm going to come in and help out with just a few things, but yeah, he's doing the heavy lifting there.
That's good. Well, it's his job. He should be. That's good.
Yeah, it's his show.
Yeah, can't rely on you for everything. So, Andrea, usually I start the show with like the question, who are you and what do you do? But everybody knows who you are. And if I kind of...
Well, not everybody.
Well, my mom, like my one viewer that might not know who you are, even she knows who you are because she's seen you on Facebook probably. And what do you do would be like, would turn this show into a listicle of an hour and a half. But just in case, Andrea Rene, what's good games? That's it?
Well, no, I mean, obviously, I've been working in the video game business for over a decade now. I co-founded What's Good Games, a podcast and YouTube channel with some friends of mine. If you guys have never checked out the show, highly recommend that you do that. It would help us out a lot. I also co-host, as you mentioned, with Greg Miller at Kind of Funny Games for Kind of Funny Games Daily. I work with all of those guys, and sometimes I make an appearance on the morning show and some of their other content. And you may have seen me freelancing or contracting for any of a variety of other outlets in the past: GameSpot, IGN, The Escapist, Game Trailers, Smosh Games, Spike TV's GTTV. I've done a bunch of stuff in my career in the video games business, and I'm very grateful, and I've had to have a lot of really awesome experiences.
Yeah, I've seen you on a lot. So I think I saw you the first time on Game Traders, where you had your news show. That's a while ago. So every now and then we talk, and like as friends, I'm like, oh shit, that's Andrea Rene from the Game Traders game show that I used to watch. But still not used to that. But it's so much that we can dig into with everything you've done. But the one story I've never heard before, and I hope that that's going to be an interesting part, is like a bit your origin story. Because I know where you come from, what you've done, but why games? Like, why did you decide at some point, I'm going to make a career out of video games?
That's a good question. And it's one that I get from time to time. Obviously, being a media professional, whenever I go to panels like at PAX or other trade shows of that nature, I get asked, how do I do what you do? Like, where did you get your start? And it all comes back to my love of broadcast news. So when I was, and really performing in general, when I was 5 years old, my mom loves to tell the story about how I asked for an agent in my hometown of Fargo, North Dakota. And she was like, oh, sweetie, we don't have agents here. They do actually have a single agent there now. So I grew up really wanting to be a performer, wanting to be in the spotlight. And it wasn't until middle school that I saw Channel 1 for the first time with Lisa Ling, who is still doing television today, that I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be holding a microphone, reporting the news on TV, and just traveling around the world telling stories. And that kickstarted my career in journalism. And I joined the school newspaper. I eventually became the editor-in-chief of the school newspaper. I applied to a bunch of journalism schools and ended up getting a scholarship to go to the University of Minnesota, where I graduated. I ended up spending my junior year of college studying TV and film production in Los Angeles because I loved Mary Hart. My mom and I would always watch Entertainment Tonight when she got home from work, and really kind of grew up on that style of TV presenting and entertainment news, and really loved the kind of glitz and glamour of Hollywood. And so I studied there for a year, fell in love with Los Angeles as a city, and went back, graduated, and then immediately upon graduation from college, moved back to Los Angeles to pursue a career in entertainment news. That was really when the digital video revolution was just getting started and when YouTube was just becoming a thing. And I was just kind of pounding the pavement, looking for gigs. I did a variety of hosting jobs, doing red carpets and junkets, which are interviews where movie stars do press for their big movies that are coming out. And I really kind of fell in love with the idea of being an on-camera presenter versus being a broadcast journalist, because the path to becoming Mary Hart is very different than the path to becoming Barbara Walters, another one of my idols that I looked up to when I was a kid. Like very different types of on-camera journalists, right? And so when I was in Los Angeles, I was like, this is really fun talking about fluff news and entertainment news. This is really what I could sink my teeth into and make a career out of. What happened is in around 2008, the writer's strike happened in Hollywood, a very famous strike that still has ripples felt in the industry today. Changed the way that Hollywood looks at talent and looks at unions. And during that time period, the idea of becoming somebody like a Ryan Seacrest or Jeff Probst or any of these other giant hosts that are big in the industry today kind of shifted. You couldn't just be somebody with on-camera training or a broadcast degree. You had to have a specialty. You had to be an expert. And now when you look at the landscape of cable television, it's all experts in like interior design, or if you're a specific kind of chef, or if you're like a carpentry expert or whatever cable channel you're watching, the host of the show probably has some real world experience in whatever they're hosting. And that was a really dramatic shift in the way that casting worked back when I was first starting out in Hollywood. And so back then I was like, okay, well, I need to have an expertise. What is my expertise? What am I going to kind of like put my cards into which niche? And, I was kind of working with a hosting coach at the time. And she was like, well, think about the things that you are passionate about in your life and that you have a lot of experience in. And I was like, well, I like a bunch of different things. I like traveling, which is, spoilers, super common. I like fashion, also super common. I was like, well, I like movies and TV. Well, that's out. Everybody likes movies and TV. And I was like, what about video games? I've been playing video games since I was 8 years old when my dad got me, my sister, our first NES console. And I was like, I wonder if I could make that my niche, because I didn't see that many people doing hosting in video games, let alone women doing hosting, quite frankly, because there wasn't a lot of places to do it. It was pretty much Spike TV and G4 on television back then. And some of the major news networks had their own gaming channel or gaming program as well. I remember a friend of mine worked for NBC LA doing games coverage back then. But that's really how I got started in on camera for video games, because I was trying to work for Entertainment Tonight. And then this crazy shift happened where I was like, well, I'm never going to get there unless I get more experience. And the only way for me to get experience is to pick an expertise. So I picked video games. And so I started looking for jobs, specifically in video games, which, spoilers, there's not that many of them. Even today, there's not that many of them. And I was looking on Craigslist when I came across an ad that was looking for an on-camera reporter for E3 2008. And as a gamer, we all know that E3 is like Mecca. Everybody wants to go to E3, but nobody can get there if you don't work in video games, because it was locked to industry only. And so I applied, and the guy who wrote me back was like, listen, I like your resume. You've got experience. I can't pay you, but I can get you a media badge to go to E3 for free. And I was like, I'm in. Let's do it. And that was the first job I ever had working in video games. And now, 10 years later, here I am.
There you are. On the wow, I'm getting a super echo all of a sudden. Okay, there we go. Sorry about it. So yeah, now you're here on the Hashcast, the pinnacle of your career, obviously. But you've done so many.
God, I hope not. I hope the pinnacle is still to come.
Yeah, I know. But that's one thing when I watched you work, because I've been following your career a little closer now that I got to know you a little bit, and every year you seem to like one up yourself and the world, really.
That's really kind of you to say. Thank you.
What I've seen you do, okay, first was like Facebook, and then it was the Nintendo World Championships, and now you are hosting the EA press conference. Do you ever have a moment where you still think like, holy shit, I can't believe this is my life?
Yes, constantly.
Yeah.
I constantly think that. I constantly think that it's that I can do better. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I've been trying to work on, and that my husband is really good at reminding me of, being like, hey, you've done some really cool stuff, because I always am looking to the future and always looking for what's next. Mm-hmm. And like, how can I keep climbing? Like, where is the top of the mountain? Yeah. But I'm so grateful for all of the opportunities that have led me to where I'm at today in my career. Because the path that I took to get here, was very unorthodox. Yeah. And was twisty and turny, and it was very challenging and difficult in some instances, and very non-traditional. And it's crazy because a lot of people are like, well, like, how do I get to where you are? And I'm like, by never giving up, really, is like the short answer. But it's like by taking any opportunity that you can, and always knowing when is the right time to keep pushing and keep wanting more for yourself. I think the biggest takeaway for me is really making sure that I was always had my convictions in the right place for where I knew that I was supposed to be. Because many times throughout my career, there were people that I worked with that told me, oh, well, you're good at this thing over here, but you're better at this thing over here. You should really be doing this thing, because that thing's too difficult. That thing being on camera. Yeah. And I was very, fortunate that I was working with some supervisors who appreciated my talents behind the camera as well. But my passion has always been to be on camera. And so whenever somebody was trying to tell me, no, don't do it, I was like, you know what? This has been great. I'm gonna go now. Yeah. But good luck to you, and hopefully I'll see you on the other side. Yeah. It's been wild. Yeah,
it has been wild, because when I see what you do, it always seems effortless. But I know you put a lot of effort in. I know you hustle, that you chase all these things down. Are you at a point in your career now where people chase you down, like, we got to get Andrea Rene, or is it still the hustle that you are chasing down these opportunities for you?
I mean, I would love to think that people are chasing me down to get Andrea Rene for their projects. And I'm always so grateful when people reach out to me and want to work with me on stuff. But I never take any of that for granted. And I still pitch myself a fair amount for specific projects that I'm really interested in, because there's a lot of great talent out there. And because of how accessible video production has become, there are more and more people every day. And I'm always so impressed by the young talent that's coming up in the industry. And I'm really excited to see where we're going to be even in just a few years.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a lot of talent, but there's only one Andrea Rene. But what I mean, when I talk to our peers, other people, your name comes up often. Like, even on this show, this is the first thing you're on, but your name has been dropped by, I would say, 80% of my guests that I had, because there's always that you're like the Kevin Bacon of this game industry, where, but it's only 3 steps or 2 steps away, I think. So
I love it.
One of my favorite episodes of What's Good Games was shortly after the Game Awards, where your girls were telling you how much what you did meant to them, like how you blaze a trail for other women in the games industry. Does it even weigh on you? Or
it was such a surreal moment, and really a kind of emotional moment hearing from them, because you say words like Trailblazer and it just doesn't even register with me, because I'm just taking it one day at a time and trying to do the best that I can, and I always want to be proud of the work that I'm doing, that I don't stop to think about the kind of ripple effect of what I am doing and what we have started with What's Good Games and how it affects other people. And we've been so fortunate to get so many kind messages and letters and people coming up to us. But having my 2 coworkers and 3 coworkers at the time, because Alexa Ray was still on the show, really talked to me honestly about, what they thought about my professional work was really a special moment for me in my career, a really heartfelt moment. And I never really stopped to think that what I could be doing was impactful to anybody other than me. And hearing from them and hearing from other women in the industry was really special. And it really helped me, kind of look back at all the really tough times that I've gone through and go, you know what? The moments like these really make it all worth it.
Yeah, and it's not just other ladies that you've helped, because I've mentioned this on the show many times before you on. I put a lot of what I do. You've been involved in as well. You have opened doors for me personally, just by being kind where you didn't need to. But it's interesting to me to hear that doesn't register for you, because the influence you have on so many people's careers and lives is just huge. But that's just you. Do you still have someone that you look up to, or where you take inspiration from to push yourself even beyond what you're already doing?
Well, first off, thank you so much for saying that, but you are incredibly talented. And if I ever helped you, it was just to open the door, but you walked through it, my friend. But when it comes to people that I look up to and people that I, kind of draw inspiration from, I have always been inspired by women who came before me that were really and truly trailblazers. And I don't mean in the video games industry, I mean on camera altogether. I mentioned Barbara Walters, and I think that she's one of the most iconic trailblazers in the on-camera broadcasting space, particularly for women. Really doing some of these tough interviews at some of the biggest news outlets around the world, and then starting her own show, which is still successful to today. People can knock on The View all they want, but I mean, that show was incredibly successful and has been going for decades, and that's not easy. And so I think someone like her is somebody that I look up to. Other professional people that I would love to model my career after, someone like Ryan Seacrest. I had mentioned him earlier, but he started out as this disc jockey in Atlanta and really kind of worked his way market to market until he got to Los Angeles, and then he got this amazing break with American Idol in 2001 and has just put his nose to the ground and not stopped working. People like to make the joke about calling me the busiest lady in the business, but I look at like Ryan Seacrest, who's doing so many different kinds of shows throughout his career and also executive producing everything, that I look at somebody like him and go, that is the ultimate career that I want. But when it comes to video games specifically, I had a moment when I was at Machinima, when I was talking to the SVP of programming, who was my boss. And he knew that I was unhappy with my current position and that I wanted more and I wanted to be doing more. And so we had to sit down. And he was like, what do you want to do in video games? What do you see yourself doing? And I said, I want to be the female Jeff Keighley of video games. I said that exact phrase because I really look up to Jeff and have been so fortunate to get to know him as a friend and to get to work with him professionally in several capacities, producing Bonus Round for game trailers and working with him at GameStop Managers Expo and doing just a lot of things with him at Game Awards and hosting the behind the scenes, the Facebook Live stage there. But looking at someone like him who started so young, but just because he has all of this experience, he doesn't mean that he works, any less hard than people who are just starting out. A lot of people don't know how much work he does behind the scenes to make the Game Awards happen or to make, E3 coverage happen and to get some of these inside stories, whether he's editing videos or getting exclusive interviews. He has really demonstrated a commitment to the art form and to the industry that very few people have. So I would definitely say those three people are people that I look up to in my career.
Yeah, I always said that Jeff Keighley should get an award for hosting the Game Awards in the first place, because the stuff that goes on with what he does, because just like what he did with Colosseum, that's just him thinking it's a good idea, and it just seems to work. Is that something you ever play with, like getting your own big event set up? Like Kind of Funny does it all the time. How about yourself? Is that a goal for you to work towards?
I mean, not particularly. I love and appreciate all the work that my friends in this industry do. I want to be involved with those things, but I know just how massive of an undertaking it is, because when I worked at Machinima and we were running the Inside Gaming Awards, even though I was just one member on that team that had a lot of people contributing to it, I saw firsthand just how difficult it is to get something like that, like an award show, up off the ground. It is a magnitude of work that people are unaware of. And that's why I have so much respect for Jeff and what he does with the Game Awards. And I had so much respect for, the team at Inside Gaming, led by Rob Smith back then, and what they put together. Making an award show is like no joke, like it's not just picking some games and voting on them for categories. I mean, it's a massive undertaking. And, even putting together a press conference, the intimate time that I had working with multiple teams at Electronic Arts for EA Play and hosting the EA Play press conference at E3 this year, was really eye-opening, because I always knew that putting together an E3 press conference is a ton of work. You have to coordinate all of these different pieces of video from hundreds of different teams and keeping it all top secret and trying to figure out the order and the flow and editing, and then, trying to execute from a technical perspective. But really working with EA, the number one publisher in the world by size, I mean, like, they're just gigantic. I think sometimes we forget how massive EA is as a company. Really was fascinating, and seeing all of the different teams and really how all of the different branches of that publisher kind of all had their hands in E3. And it was really, really neat to kind of see that from a behind the scenes perspective. And that's why I tweeted what I did during E3 before the press conferences all started, about having respect for the work, even if it's not up to your expectations or the announcements are what you were hoping to see. Remember that, hey, you might not be a fan of Command and Conquer Rivals on mobile, but a lot of people put a lot of time and energy into not only making that game, but making the trailer and making the gameplay demo that happened at E3 and coordinating the dissemination of information about that game. You don't have to like that game. You don't have to like EA as a publisher or Ubisoft or Bethesda or anybody else that showed at E3. But the thing I was trying to convey was have respect for the process and the fact that it takes a village to make something like that happen. And that was something that I was, really grateful to be a part of.
Yeah, it was great. And I agree that I don't think everybody sees the amount of work that goes into it. Like, the hype is so high that you're waiting for your expectations to be met, right? So it's easy to forget all the work that goes into it. And my absolute favorite part
is people behind that work.
My absolute favorite part is when a FIFA trailer comes in our little bubble, who all hate sports games for some reason. It's like, and then you go onto YouTube, and that trailer has like 1 million views within 20 minutes. Like, there's something there, guys. You might not like it, but there is definitely. It's
really cool being on the ground, interviewing people for the pre-show during EA Play, and how excited people were to play Madden and FIFA. Like, as you mentioned, video game journalists are jaded. They love to shit on sports games, and we forget that, like, FIFA pays for the party. Everything that EA does, in order for EA to make a game like Unravel or Unravel 2, they need to take those funds from FIFA. Yeah.
I always wondered, like, why is, and maybe I don't know of this, but why isn't there that one already popular journalist that is going just all in on Madden and FIFA? Because I don't see it anywhere, and I don't play Madden.
Because you're not looking. They exist. They absolutely exist. They are out there. People who only cover sports games or who dedicate their channels to sports game coverage. They're out there. You're just probably not looking for them because, let's be honest. Yeah. Do you want to watch Madden coverage?
Not Madden, because I'm not a super football guy, because I'm European. But FIFA, exactly, football. By the way, speaking of football, there's going to be a patron question later on football, so we'll get into that a little bit. Okay. But I bet those guys are pulling huge numbers too, so maybe there's a niche for someone to dig into. But yeah, no, it's great. I always like hearing you talk about your career, and I learn every time you speak. But being called the busiest lady in the biz, like it's an honor. But when I talk to people, they are like, does she have like 27 hours in a day while everybody else has 24? Like, do you still have time to relax? Because even playing games sometimes is work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to kind of force yourself to make time. And I had that moment recently where I just came back from an international family trip. I was in Italy with my mom and her wife, because my mom has never been out of the country before. And she's like, oh, let's go. And they decided that the time that was best for them was over New York Comic Con. Mm-hmm. And New York Comic Con is usually a big show for me. I usually work that show. I go. And so I had to make the decision to say, you know what? No, sometimes work needs to take a backseat to family. And like that work-life balance is so important no matter what industry you work in, whether you work in sales or insurance or medical or construction or whatever it is. Like work-life balance is so necessary and so important. It's something that took me a really long time to learn, because in the beginning of my career, when I had my nose to the ground and was just not looking up and not taking any air, I missed out. There was one point where I didn't go home to see my family for 18 months. I distinctly remember it, because I counted it off being like, I haven't been home in almost a year and a half before I've seen my family, because I've been working on my career in Los Angeles. And there were a lot of regrets that I have from that period of time where like you don't get that time with your friends and your family back. You know, it's important. And I also, on the other hand, though, think it's important that the time that you do devote to your work, you need to be there 100% of the time. Yeah. You can't phone it in and expect to be the best that you can be and expect to succeed to the best of your abilities. You know, like I always tell people, you know, I can't give you enough advice if you're not going to work as hard as you possibly can. Yeah. If you want to get into this business, or if you want to get into any business, it has to be because you are passionate about what you're doing. And if you're not, then it's just a job. And it's okay to just have a job. If your passion is your hobby, put your time and your energy into your hobby instead and do your job to pay your bills. But be passionate about something. But if you're going to have a career, you have to be willing to sacrifice. And you have to be willing to work harder than everybody else and do the best job and do the best work. Just having it be okay or satisfactory just ain't going to cut it.
No, especially in a crowded market like in the gaming space. If you look at the top, and I consider you part of the top of the people who you always see. Like I know there's YouTubers who have like 23 million views, but every time I discovered a guy like that, I've never heard of him before. Like I'm not sure. It's probably also the bubble that I operate in. But still, like there's only a couple of people who are on stage, like are on camera. The hustle. But burnout is a real thing nowadays. Like content creating burnout. I talk about this often because it's something dear to my heart and something that I have to struggle with as well. And I am like small fish in compared to the whole thing, but I do it on the side still because it's not a career. So how do you make sure, like other than planning vacations, like what does Andrea Rene do when she kicks off her shoes at the end of a long day?
Well, burnout is real. And I mean, content creator culture is just inherently hand in hand with burnout because in order to be a successful content creator, you have to be creating all the time. And I know so many YouTubers that go through these burnout cycles and will take, time away from YouTube and step away. I remember, a guy named Hutch, who you guys may or may not know. I met him when I was working at Machinima back in like 2012, and he had a gigantic YouTube channel, millions of subscribers, and he was one of the top paid creators on Machinima. And he finally one day was just like, you know what? I'm walking away from it all. Like, I can't do this anymore. It's too intense. It's too much. And he took a really long time off. And it was tough because I remember my bosses at Machinima being like, you guys got to get him back. He can't take a break. And it's just like, no, dude, he's a fucking person. Like, if he wants to walk away, he needs to walk away. And now he's back and he's streaming and he's doing other kinds of content creation. But I think that level of burnout hits all creators because in order to be competitive, you have to be creating constantly. It's particularly on YouTube or Twitch where the platforms and the audience demands that you're there 6 or 7 days a week. You know, you can't. I remember, you know, even somebody like Ninja, who seems to be infallible right now and who has had crazy success over the last year, talked about how if he takes 2 or 3 days off, he loses 50,000 subscribers.
That's great.
Which that's not an insignificant amount of money. No. You know? So that's wild to think about, you know, that, you know, burnout is built in to this business and you have to be ready and prepared to deal with it. And I think the important thing to remember, and the thing that I, you know, say to my friends who work in this business is the world is going to keep spinning. If you take a day off, if you don't put out a video, the world is just going to keep going without you. And while that may seem harsh, it's important to remember because we put so much pressure on ourselves to constantly be working that we have to remember that the people who care about our content and who care about us as creators are going to be there to support us no matter what. And that's what I love about working with a platform like Patreon, because it allows us to connect with the people who care about us as creators and care about our content. And it doesn't feel artificial, because if we miss an episode, which we haven't missed one yet, thankfully, but if we, you know, are late with our patron rewards, or if we have to move a live stream or anything that happens because life happens, they're understanding. And that's the best way to kind of avoid this burnout, is to find a way to connect with your audience that cares about you as a creator and will be there to support you. Obviously, you can't take that for granted. It doesn't mean you can be taking breaks all the time and be going on vacation every other month. But, you know, like...
Oh, no, sorry.
No, I was going to say it. I love her, but she's always gone. The thing is like, you have to make sure to take care of you, because if you don't take care of you, then you can't make content. And then if you can't make content, you don't have an audience anyway. You know? So it's important to find that balance and to remind yourself that you deserve to take a break.
No, it's true. And now that you're like your own brand, you have your What's Good Games, does it make it harder, or is it easier to step away from it? Because I know you were on vacation and there's a Brit and Steimer show. You must have thought at some point, I hope they're not running into tech issues. Is that still hard for you?
I knew they were running into tech issues. Listen, it's kind of column A, column B for harder or easier. Because on one hand, it's harder because it's your baby and you're always invested in it and you never want to step away from it because it's your company. But on the other hand, it's easier because you only answer to yourself. So if we need to take time off, or if we need to change the date of a shoot, if we need to shorten something because we can't, you know, shoot for 3 hours, we can only shoot for 1. You know, we have the luxury of being able to make those decisions. Whereas when I worked on a team and I was in an office as a salaried worker, I didn't get to make those calls. You know, like I remember when I was working at Clever Games, and I was covering E3, and I was the only person running that channel. And I luckily had an editor on the editing team who was helping me cut the videos together. But like, I was producing, writing, shooting, uploading, writing all the metadata, doing the blog posts, pulling all the assets. I was like soup to nuts, doing everything except for cutting the video together. And those were some long days, having to be on the show floor for the entire duration of like the expo hall hours, and then going back to the office to do all of the edits and upload all the videos. Like, it was brutal. E3 crunch is like some of the worst. Anybody in media will tell you. And even as a video person, I didn't have it as difficult as my writing counterparts did because they had even more ridiculous deadlines. But that's hard, trying to find a time to tell yourself that you need to take a break for you.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of rambling about this a little bit, but it's a really important thing. And Burnout's real. I did a vlog about it on the What's Good Games Patreon page a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago. I was just talking about how it was right after E3, maybe it was in around Comic-Con when I was just like, I might die.
I know that feeling, and I've only done like 2 E3s in a PAX, but it is nuts. Like the hours that people put into there, and it's not just like the show floor because it never ends there. After that, it's the social part. It's still work because you're meeting for the first time. You're doing the networking, and it's friendly, but it's still work. Like you're not.
Oh yeah. Have to do it. And like that's the thing that I always tell people who are starting out in the industry, and I think you and I had this like heart to heart too when I was like, you have to go to all the things, Water.
Yeah.
You just have to go to them all. Yeah. Everything you must go to because you never know who you're going to meet. You never know what kind of conversations you're going to have. And that's one of the key pieces of advice I would give to anybody who is looking to get into the video games business or any business. If there are networking opportunities, don't be too tired to go. Mm-hmm. Just go. Even if you're there for 30 minutes and you make one lap and you talk to one person or exchange business cards one time, it's worth it because you never know who that one person is going to be.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I think that's kind of how I met most of my people, just hanging out there, introducing myself twice to everybody because back then nobody knew my face yet.
Well, listen, you're kind of hard to miss.
That's true.
So once you're introduced to the Hashtagonist once, if you forget his face, it's on you because you are a gigantic person.
That is true. And that's going to be my trademark. Like you'll only meet me once, and hopefully it's a good impression. Otherwise, I'm screwed. But I could hear you talk about the work all the time because, like I said, I learn every time you speak. But I know you also have other passions. One of them, Destiny. And I want to geek out with you about Destiny because
let's do it.
Let's do it. Like before we start, like we have to do a thing. Like I'm loving Forsaken. I got my copy from Bungie, the expansion. So if you think this is all a big shill,
provided by Activision.
Exactly. How are you liking your time in Destiny 4? Because now you're like a clan leader.
Oh,
that's
yes.
New,
well, listen,
right?
If we weren't shooting the show, we would be playing an Iron Banner right now. We're probably going to play together after this. Yeah. But I'm loving Destiny. I've been a Destiny fan since the moment that I played it in preview sessions when they first announced this game. I vividly remember playing in the Destiny Vanilla Alpha way back in the day before the PlayStation 4 launched. And I have just always loved this game every step of the way. And I've taken some breaks from it and come back and taken breaks and come back, which you do with any kind of live service game. But I just love the camaraderie around this game. Not only is it a fun game to play solo, but it's even more fun game to play with friends. And I've never really been part of a guild or a clan in any game before Destiny. And that really kind of opened my eyes to the benefits and all of the amazing things about being in a clan with people and having that online friendship that can sometimes translate into real world friendships. Like one of the guys that I used to play Paragon with, Scooter Magruder, who does a bunch of sports videos, I finally got to meet him in person at PAX West last year, which was so crazy because we had spent so many hours playing online together and I'd seen so many of his videos, but we'd never actually met in person. So we got to hang out at the show and that was really fun. And, just kind of forging those friendships. And like you and I played online before we ever met in person and we were playing games together. And Destiny just is such a fun game to play. Yeah. It's just so good.
It is so good. I'm having, and I was also kind of done with Destiny because I used to play it by myself, and then we started playing, and then we became prison buddies, like Prison of Elders, but it's still prison buddies.
Of Elders, yeah, man.
And that just brought me back to that game, and then of course the second part we played a little bit there, Iron Banner as well, and now Forsaken, and again now I'm part of the What's Good Guardians. Shout out to all those guys because they were fantastic. Running me through the Leviathan raid, that took, how long did we play? 10 hours?
Don't say it out loud. Don't say it out loud.
Like I'm not allowed.
Happened.
No, it never happened. I think the last time I stayed up till 4 a.m. playing video games was when I was like 23. It was ridiculous. It was
just one more try. Just one more try.
I know.
No, this one's gonna be the one.
Yeah, I'm glad we finished it eventually. But like you have a huge community, just in general in the work What's Good Games. But now you have this super dedicated group as well, and everybody's benefiting from that. How does it feel to run such a wonderful group of people? Because they're all nice people. Like, how do you even find them to begin with, or do they find you again? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, they find us, and like what's great about it is that these people will kind of assert themselves. People who want to be in leadership positions, like the clan admins, Salisbury and Sarcomatos are so great. And like the thing is like about the clan, like people want to be around other positive people at the end of the day, and they're just looking for that connection. And if you allow trolls into your community, that's the kind of community you're going to have. And so we just don't. We have a really kind of hardline stance about it. Not only just in our clan, but really across all of our social media groups for What's Good Games. And we just had an incident recently in our Facebook fan page where, we had to ban somebody, and somebody else was complaining about it, and go, listen, we don't have time for people who are here to be negative, and we're happy to give you a warning and say, yo, that's not cool. Like, we're not cool with that. But then if you persist and go, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want anyway, we're not going to give you another chance. It's like a one strike policy. Like, you get one warning and then you're out. And like, well, the reason we do that is because life is too short for us to deal with the harassment that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And being an all-female run company, we get an extra share of harassment online than, the average person does. And so we kind of run a tight ship, but the result of that is that the group that is part of our community, whether it be the What's Good Guardians or the Facebook fan page or people in our Patreon or people who respond to us on Twitter or in our chats, our happy hour Q&A chats every month, those are good, solid people that want to support the content that we're making and us as content creators and want to be friends with each other. Yeah. And we just want good people to be connected to other good people. And meeting these people in person at our community meet and greets that we've had at PAX, and that we're going to have one at TwitchCon next week, like that makes it all worth it, getting to meet these people, because they're so fantastic in person, and I just love our community.
Yeah, no, I'm super impressed with the community you have, and community is such an important thing for me, and even like my super tiny community. I think we need to highlight the good maybe a little more often than we often do. And I see you do that often. Like you said, like you have a very strict policy, one strike you're out. People might not like that, but sometimes we cater too much to the negative, I think, in the industry in general. So I love when I see you guys, how you do that. And it works, because I love being part of the What's Good Guardians, and they're all fantastic people, super helpful. But there's the other side of it. Sometimes you have to say something that is dear to your heart that might not go over very well with part of the fan base. Like, how do you, with such a reach that you have, deal with, not necessarily have to be political, but the dangers of having an opinion? Like, how do you weigh that when you say these kind of things? Like, there you had a gun discussion with Greg Miller a couple of weeks ago, and I could just see, like, this is something you care deeply about, and it doesn't matter what people, if they agree or disagree with you, that is just something you have to say. How do you deal with that when you have an audience your size?
It's a good question. I've always been a very opinionated person. Anybody that knows me and anybody that's known me for a long time has known that I am not afraid to tell you what I think about anything, and that sometimes that's not always a good thing. I need to shut up and be a better listener. And I've learned that as I get older, I am a better listener. But in regards to being an online personality or a public persona with a following, it's tricky, because part of me is always conscious about who's watching and who's looking. And is somebody that maybe wants to hire me watching or looking? Am I saying something that maybe they might not like? Should I be more neutral and just be someone who doesn't really have an opinion and stays really objective? But we're in an era where punditry is really popular. And so I kind of am looking at it like, listen, I don't need to be a caricature of myself. I think that there's a lot of people on social media who are larger than life versions of who they are in real life. And that's never my intention. I always want to be as authentic as possible and true to who I am and true to the values that I have. But I also want to be confident in what I'm saying. And it's tough sometimes because sometimes, you have opinions about things, but you don't have all the information.
Yeah.
And so trying to pivot when you're a public persona, when you've expressed an opinion is really challenging. And it's something I've had to learn the hard way. And my dear friend, Garnet Lee, who invited me way back when to be a guest on his podcast, Weekend Confirmed, which was one of the first podcasts I had ever been on. And I learned so much from him and from being on that show. Told me it's not even about what you say, it's about the perception about what you say. And you need to always keep that in mind, that you may say something and mean it in a specific way, but the perception of what you're saying is probably not what you mean it to be. And you need to be aware of that. And that was really great advice that I needed to hear when I was younger and something that I carry to today. But as I get older, I shy away from being not as political as I need to be or not as controversial. Sometimes I'll write something and then I'll delete it because I'll be like, you know what? That's just being inflammatory, and I don't really have like a hard stake in this. But other things, like you mentioned, the gun violence issue. Greg and I were talking about that in relationship to the Jacksonville shootings that happened at the Madden tournament, which really kind of struck the video game industry. We've obviously had several violent shootings in the United States, thousands technically, if you look at the numbers, but some that have been really, really terrible, and the loss of life has been catastrophic. And it's an issue that we keep having to talk about. And so when it hit the video games industry specifically, I couldn't not say how I felt about it any longer. And you just kind of get to a place as somebody on camera that goes, you know what? Like, I want to help people and do the right thing. Yeah. And if you have an opinion that's going to hurt people or not be beneficial, or really just kind of will be like riling people up just for the sake of getting people like for stirring the pot, maybe is a better way to say it, then, maybe you should think twice about what you're saying. But I feel like on certain issues, it's important to say something. Like specifically now, I've changed my Twitter name, and I've never changed my name to something that did not include my name before in the history of having my Twitter account. Now my Twitter says vote November 6th because I think that we're at such a pivotal time in our democracy here in the United States that I'm not trying to tell you who to vote for or how to vote on the issues that are important to you in whatever city, state, or district you live in. I'm saying it's important to vote because in the last major election, the turnouts were abysmal for what they should have been. And I want people to recognize how important it is to exercise, your democracy, your participation in democracy. And so that's why I'm talking about voting. And our mutual friend, Khalif Adams, did this amazing fundraising effort for vote writers to get out, to help people register to vote. And I'm not going to go too far down this rabbit hole of vote, but I think going back to your original question, it's a balance between always being aware of who's watching and who's listening, but also going, you know what? Sometimes it's important to say something, even if it means I'm losing followers. Like after I talked about the gender pay gap in online streaming, we did a special sponsored presentation with PayPal. We lost patrons. People specifically wrote in and said that they were withdrawing their pledge from What's Good Games because they didn't agree that there was a gender pay gap. And that was hard. That we took a stance and that we did this, what I thought was a really great sponsored segment about highlighting the disparity in the gender pay gap. It was like, listen, I'm not trying to say you're a bad person if you only support male creators. I support male creators. I'm friends with a ton of male creators. but maybe look at why you're maybe only supporting male creators and not female creators. That was just the conversation we had, and apparently it got people so upset that they withdrew their support from our show, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, we're never all gonna agree, but sometimes you gotta talk about the tough stuff.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate it because especially a person like you who does have that influence. Like I said, like sometimes you have to say something and you might lose followers, but knowing the influence that you have to do good, even with my tiny audience, I always feel like, okay, if I have a platform, I have to use it for good, because a lot of people don't. They use their platform to enhance their platform by saying stuff that is just shitty.
Logan Paul.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a whole another episode right there. Probably off camera and a bottle of champagne later. But I appreciate that, and I think it's important. So like it sucks that you lose patrons over that, but are you not proving a point at that point?
I mean, sure. I mean, the thing that I wrote back to him was like, listen. You don't have to agree with me or believe what I believe. All I ask is that you listen, that we can have like a mature discourse or dialogue about it. Mm-hmm. And our community has been really great about that. Like particularly with the gun violence issue, like I'm not telling you need to change your stance on gun ownership laws. What I am saying is like, let's agree that we need to find a solution to what's happening in our country, you know, like let's find out why. Let's figure out how to stop all of these people from being murdered by guns. Yeah. Like, how do we fix it? Like, can we agree that something needs to change? Like, we gotta fix something, you know, like what that solution is. Like, let's talk about it. Let's figure out a common ground. Yeah. And like so much now on social media is like these polarizing ends of conversations versus like, let's figure out how to talk to each other. Instead, we're like yelling in our own silos, and that doesn't do anybody any good. No, you know, like, and I think I have a unique perspective on it because I worked in. Not only am I from like a very conservative place, being from North Dakota, now like living in like by the top of the Bible Belt in a red state. Yeah. Now living in the darkest blue place on the map in San Francisco Bay Area, right? Yeah. Like, doesn't get any more blue than where I'm at. Yeah. And like having that dichotomy of where I come from and where I am now, and kind of wrestling with both of those sides and going like, how can these two meet in the middle and talk about it? Coupled with my experience working in bars and restaurants for over a decade, and have be necessary for me to be able to talk to people from all walks of life, and be able to make conversation with absolutely everybody who walked in that door, no matter what their affiliation was, where they were from, what their religion was, whatever, right? Yeah. So I try to take all of that knowledge that I have and put it out there in a more positive way.
Yeah. No, and I think it's great because someone told me, and I wish I could remember who it was, but they said like if you have a platform and you get upset about microtransactions or something that doesn't really matter, but then you never address like the hard stuff, that tells you something. Like if you do a 20-minute video about what EA pulls now, but then something like this happens even in our own bubble, like with the Jacksonville shooting, and you don't address it, like that, I could never do that myself. So when I hear someone like you speak up, and I hope people follow suit, because you know we have a responsibility to be better and help other people be better as well. So that's important to me, and that's probably why we're friends, because we align on that kind of stuff. But it's just great to hear. That's just great to hear. Speaking of community, like super hard segue there, but I have a question for you.
Okay.
From my patrons, because I also have a Patreon.com.
Yes, you do.
/Hashtag. Yeah, I know. It's it's smaller.
Long way to the day of buttons.
That's right. Oh, buttons. He's right there in the back. I'm not sure if you can see him because I can't see my own screen, but that's a remnant of my past. Buttons. So I have a Patreon question because I know you're a big football fan, the Vikings. So I had a question from my friend Hunter Pearson, who is one of my greatest patrons because he's the only one in the question asking tier, and he wanted to know from you, what is your favorite lifetime memory of the Vikings team, and what do you think of the season so far?
It's tough because I have been a Vikings fan literally my entire life. Mm-hmm. My dad had season tickets for over 30 years. and went to games on the regular, and we watched the games every weekend that I was with him. My parents got divorced when I was 1, so they had split custody when I was growing up. But I just I think because it's so fresh in my mind, one of the greatest memories I had obviously was last year, this miracle run that they had where they won the game to get them to the NFC Championship, the playoff game, where it didn't look like they were going to win. And it was this potential for the Vikings, who haven't seen a Super Bowl in so long, to maybe be in the Super Bowl in their home stadium. That was a really amazing moment. I also very distinctly remember the moment that the Vikings went to the NFC Championship against the New Orleans Saints when Brett Favre was our quarterback, which was such a weird time, so conflicting, because I'd grown up hating Brett Favre because he was the quarterback of the Packers, our arch nemesis forever, and just feeling once again just so heartbroken about that game and how we just got outplayed. And I just remember when Brett Favre they were playing outside, because I think they were playing at TCF when they were in the construction phase, I think, of the new stadium. And they were playing outside, and he kept hitting the ground, and it was -2 or something crazy outside. And just being we're never going to make it through. And then we did. We made it to the NFC Championship, and then we fucking lost. Yeah. But I love being a football fan, and I've been a football fan my whole life. It's crazy. I was just talking about this with somebody, and they're like, so you play video games, you drink beer, you like whiskey, you watch football. And I was like, yeah, dude.
Where's this going?
These are the things that I love. Yeah. These are the things I love. But I also love wearing makeup. I love wearing dresses. And it's tough because I've always been put in this situation where some people think that I'm supposed to be less girly, to be authentic, and that, she can't be a real gamer if she actually does her hair. Yeah. That discussion, dresses, she can't be a real gamer. She watches football, she can't be real. And it's just why does it have to be that way? It's just so dumb. Yeah. But football's great. Yeah. Wow.
I know.
You're in Canada.
Yeah, we have some, but I don't watch it. And my love for football is directly linked to how well I'm doing in fantasy football. And this year I'm doing terrible because I missed the draft. I had to do the auto draft, and it was just a disaster.
Yeah, but sometimes auto draft can be your best friend, but yours was a disaster?
Yeah, I picked Le'Veon Bell, who has not played because he doesn't have a team, and I picked 9 receivers for some reason.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, can't you, when you auto draft, select how many of each position you want?
Oh no, I had 0 input because I missed the whole thing, so I didn't get to set it up at all. It was a disaster. Yeah.
Able to trade some of them away?
No, because I'm too proud for that. Because they tried to get my.
Too proud for that.
They tried to get my one good running back and then give me more crap receivers. No, that's not how this works.
No,
guys.
Well, you can't trade a receiver for a receiver. I mean, if you have 9 receivers, you got to trade them off for a tight end. Yeah. I mean, really, you need at least one solid quarterback.
I know.
That's 9 receivers.
It was garbage.
How did that even happen?
I don't know. It was ridiculous. But I like football because, I had not watched a game of football until I moved to Canada. And then my father-in-law is a huge football fan. And I kind of enjoy it. It's nice. I went to hockey first because I'm in Canada. I have to learn hockey, the rules, and now football. But it's great. But I kind of... I can feel where you're coming from when you have a team that's almost making it, because the Dutch, I'm Dutch, they played Spain a couple of years ago in the World Cup finals. I invited all my friends to come see the final on the big screen, and it was 114 minutes of nothing. And then Spain scored in the last minute. It was terrible. It still hurts a little bit. Anyway, thanks, Hunter, for that question, bringing up all this trauma.
I know someday my team will make it back to the Super Bowl, and just maybe we'll win. I bought my dad and I matching T-shirts, matching purple Vikings T-shirts that say "Just one before I die."
I seen that picture. I think.
Yeah, so they have this company does it for select teams. The Cubs used to be on it.
Hmm.
Just one before I died, before they
Yeah.
won their historic World Series. Um, but yeah, the Vikings have never won a Super Bowl. We've been to the Super Bowl 4 times, but never won. We haven't been in a long time.
It's time. You never know. You
I
never.
thought last year was the
I
year.
know everybody thought it was last year was the year.
Outplayed. I can't even be mad at Philadelphia, even though their fans are fucking terrible, and I feel bad about saying that. The team itself
Yeah.
just outplayed us, and
Yeah.
they deserve, the victory that they had. But
That's too bad. That's too bad. Well, I hate to end on such a sour note for you with the Philly fans, but
yeah, why are we talking about my team losing?
I know. It's all Hunter's fault. If you ever see him in Destiny, just give him some crap. But I do I could make this episode like 17 hours, but it's just crazy. We just need to hang out again, hopefully soon at one of the conferences.
Yeah, please, come to Spain.
I know. I should. I'll see. My current situation makes it a little complicated to plan international
Well, at the very
trips.
least, tell me you're coming to PAX East.
Yeah, that is definitely bad. I'm gonna pitch a panel. I mentioned
We had so much fun at PAX East last
it
year.
was so good. Oh my goodness, you were so sick and nobody knew because you were like just working through it.
Dude, it was rough. It was real bad. Steimer was even more sick than I was,
She
though.
was a mess. I was sitting next to her
Yeah.
during the D&D session. I was like, "Don't give me whatever it is you have, because it's gonna be terrible."
Ugh.
Oh well. But anyway, so I always end my show on a segment that I call Podcast and Shill, where you can promote whatever you want. We already know where we can find you at Andrea Rene.
He already calls me a shill.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that just lovely? I just made it a thing because we're all shills, of course. Is there anything you want to highlight? Anything you promote? Anything that's coming up that we can see you in?
Yeah, definitely. So, right now, What's Good Games is working on some cool stuff. We have our Patreon happy hour Q&A happening next weekend. If you guys missed our Halloween series, our spooky Let's Play Lights Off, that is showing on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/What's Good Games. We're doing a Lights Off scary game live stream on Saturday, October 27th. I'm going to be working with the Kind of Funny Kids for Extra Life this year, so that I believe that is November 3rd. So if you guys want to participate, kindoffunny.com has all the information. I'm going to be doing a shift for them, and we're obviously helping raise money for Children's Miracle Network, and that'll be really fantastic. I'm on the advisory board for Able Gamers, one of my favorite charities, working with gamers with disabilities and making sure that they help get equipment out to people who want to play games and maybe never thought they could before. ablegamers.org if you guys want to learn more information about that. And of course, we've got Veterans Day coming up. So Stack Up is another charity that I work with that is doing a bunch of fundraising for veterans because they make everything possible here in the United States. We would not have all the amazing freedoms we do without the people of the armed forces. So if you guys are interested in helping send care packages to troops in active duty zones or to help get games in the hands of recovering veterans who are in hospitals, that's stack-up.org. And you can also find information about all those charities on any of my socials. So yeah,
that's good. I love I'm a huge Able Gamers shill as well. I talk about these guys a lot because they are the best, and they are now in the credits of Black Ops 4. I saw a couple of names roll by there, so super cool. I have to shill also for myself, and I'm gonna do the dirtiest shill ever this time because I know if they are listening, the people who are listening to this episode, there's a good chance it's because you are here, Andrea, on the show, and that you posted this. So if you are enjoying this kind of conversation, check out some of the other episodes, because I've done a couple now. This is episode 27. I think this format starts happening around episode 15, where I'm going to start doing the one-on-ones. Before, it's like just 4 white dudes on a podcast screaming about video games. I was like, okay, there's 100 of these. I'm going to do something else. And that's when I started doing the one-on-ones. But there are a couple other one-on-ones. Episode 8 is with Joe Noel from Kind of Funny as well. It's a great episode. So
I love Joey.
Joey is the best. I wanted to have her again with a better setup. So Joey, come on, show again. But yeah, so check it out.
Let's do all 3 of us, you, me, and Joey.
That would be fantastic.
Also, I still have to get you on What's Good. You have to come on our show.
I know. Whenever you need me, I will be there. I was already on your panel, and it was such a cool thing. It was one of my highlights of PAX to be on the panel with you guys.
You did a great job. You talked about a game that I hadn't heard of.
Sausage
and I still
Bomber.
Yeah, Sausage Bomber.
Yeah, I shell for these guys all the time. Yeah.
It's in the App Store, right? Sausage Bomber.
It is so funny because this is also one of my favorite stories. They had a bug in their game, but it was not apparent. But it was just a high score you can meet, and I'm probably the only one that like tried to get like a platinum in this game, and I just couldn't. So I tweeted at them saying, "You gotta fix this, or I'm gonna go to PAX and I'll show you." So I went to PAX, showed them the level that was broken, and then they fixed it. And I was like, "Yes, I am an influencer in the video game industry. I did this. I made this work." But yeah, that's great. So another shill, I'll throw it out there, Sausage Bomber. And if you're listening to this through another service and you don't know who I am the Hashtagonist, and you can find me on Twitter at the Hashtagonist as well. And this was episode 27 with the amazing Andrea Rene. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Andrea. I really appreciate it. As the busiest lady in the biz, that you made a good amount of time for me tonight.
Well, don't forget, we had that little technical snafu in the middle. But well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm so glad we finally got to do this. And I'll see you. I'll see you in Destiny 2, my friend.
All right, we'll go log on and shoot some noobs in Iron Banner, and we'll talk soon. And if you're still listening, thanks so much for checking it out, and we'll be back next week with Amanda.